Welcome to the video. In today's video we are going to be discussing some of the most iconic sniper scenes that you guys voted for on my Patreon page. I've been very fortunate to make a living as a long-range shooter over the last couple of years, so I thought I would break down some of your favorite sniper scenes, list some of the things they got right, and unfortunately go through some of the things they got horribly wrong. So our first movie we're going to jump into, you guessed it, American Sniper. Let's roll. So we're starting out at the training grounds. Chris is currently training with his teammates. One of the things I noticed straight off the bat is how these rifles recoil. They jump up like that. The recoil is not accurate of how a rifle recoils. You guys will notice as these rifles are recoiling, it's almost like the actors were told, okay, cool, you're firing now, just like pretend that your rifles kicked you a little bit. And it seems like they've got more of an up motion, whereas if I show you some footage of a real rifle recoiling, you'll notice the recoil is straight back. And maybe they've overemphasized this in this specific scene, at least that's what I was thinking, to show like, geez, these guys are really bad shooters. But it is a theme throughout the movie that you will see. And yeah, it was quite funny. Now usually when I watch movies like this I have to force myself not to look for these little things, but that's not the goal of today's video. In today's video we're gonna nitpick the crap out of these. Now this guy gives his little speech here that's a little nauseating. That is in fact true, laying the ankle flat, making sure you're spread out as you're shooting, just to give you a stabler platform. Again, that guy's jumping his whole shoulder back up. Okay, right, so the guys are hitting some steel here. Now you'll notice there's a distinct bullet mark. Now steel targets don't really do that. If you're shooting AR-500 or hardened steel, it just makes a little splash. And also the target shakes pretty violently. Now I'm assuming the guys are shooting .308 Winchester here, and that's gonna knock the steel pretty hard even at the distances they're shooting. I'm judging this will be at about 200-300 meters. And the plate doesn't shake at all, and you'll see that continuously as we sort of go through the scene. The plates really don't move much, whereas if in real life you were shooting a steel plate, it's got significant amount of movement because there's a hell of a lot of energy that's transferred. See? This just knocked my watch off. There's a hell of a lot of energy that gets transferred when you're shooting steel because that bullet comes to a sudden stop. Right, so here we've got Chris on a semi-automatic rifle shooting suppressed this time. Now this is something that you guys probably have seen, and if you're a shooter you know this. The suppressors in the movies, they don't sound like real suppressors. A real suppressor is super loud still. Also the way Chris is missing here, the bullet is hitting the ground what we call splash, okay? So that's how the dust kicks up. And the dust is really not consistent with how a real bullet would kick up dust. You can sort of see these are little charges that they've set off to make him miss. Now here his instructor asks him if he's got his off eye closed. Now that basically means is, have you got your other eye closed, as in the traditional sense how we would shoot. Now for me as a competitive rifle shooter, I shoot with both eyes open all the time. Simply that allows me to find my target quicker and engage that target quicker. And that's exactly what Chris says here. He says if I close my non-shooting eye, I won't be able to see what's out there because his peripheral vision would be confined to only seeing what's inside his optic. Now here he goes on to engage a rattlesnake. So in this instance they got the scale of the rattlesnake a little bit wrong, but for the most part in this movie the target and the crosshair, sort of when they show you the scope footage of what Chris is actually seeing through his scope and his reticle, it seems pretty good. But in this specific case the rattlesnake, unless it was right in front of him, it wouldn't be this sort of close. And also the way the bullet hits this rattlesnake, it pops up straight in the air. It's not realistic at all. The snake would simply explode in a horizontal manner. It won't pop up and come back down as a complete snake. That was terrible.
Better when it's breathing.
And then he says, I'm better when it's breathing. Ultra cringe-worthy. Right, so the next scene is pretty powerful but pretty accurate, except for the underlying theme of super poor recoil, or how the rifle actually kicks, recoils back into Chris. He sees a woman come out with what appears to be a Russian grenade. She passes it off to a youngster. He runs up, Chris puts a round in him, immediately rechambers his rifle, racks a fresh round in there. That's very well done. That's very realistic how we would do it if we're target shooting or hunting for that matter. And as she runs up, she's about to throw the grenade towards the troops. He puts a round in her too, and his rifle recoils in a ridiculous manner. Other than that, pretty accurate scene, I would say. I have had zero combat experience, but from at least the shooting perspective, which I can comment on, that looks pretty accurate. Right, so Chris is set up on a rooftop here. He's got his rifle on his backpack. Maybe there's some sort of lower obstruction where his rifle's barrel doesn't have a clear line of sight and he could potentially shoot into something. So he's built up his position a little bit. He sees a Haji coming out with an RPG and he decides to put a round in him, which is obviously the right call. But you'll notice where he's sort of aiming and where his bullet's hitting, not accurate, okay? So when we shoot groups at 100 meters, this was 75 yards or meters, whatever he ranged it in. For these type of rifles, it's a chip shot. It's nothing. It's like a no-brainer. I mean, he should be able to stack his rounds into a little hole like that. Now, when they show us the reticle and they show us where the bullet actually hits, it's not accurate. So, in fact, if he had 100 yards, zero, he would actually be hitting a little bit high because his target was a little bit closer. At this distance, I'm not sure if it's army protocol or whatever. I don't know why he wouldn't have gone for the headshot. Very close, incredibly easy shot. Most of us watching this channel probably could make that shot 10 out of 10 times, and that would leave your target 100% out for the count. He can't do any further damage by potentially lying on the ground and still discharging that rocket-propelled grenade. So yeah, the headshot would have just ended things right there. Right, so the famous scene of American Sniper, the long shot kill. Let's see how this plays out. Right, Chris is taking his glove off so you can feel that trigger. We notice there's a little bit of wind movement when the bad guy pushes his muzzle out between the sort of black plastic bags. This guy's on a ladder, sitting duck. By the looks of things, if we see what he sees through his scope magnification, that's a really close shot. He appears to be dialing in some elevation, probably taking some off, because that's super close if we're judging by the scale of the reticle and what he's seeing. That's a very, very easy shot. Chris sees, whoa, this guy's shooting from way back here. He turns around his position and he builds a new position, and somehow manages to see where this guy is set up. Now, another thing we have to look at here, this bad guy is allegedly an Olympic level shooter. Okay, so if we look at how he pushes his little booger hook completely through his trigger guard and basically smashes on his finger, an Olympic level shooter absolutely wouldn't do that. We try and split the trigger with the middle part of our little index finger, this last digit, and it's a very methodical 90-degree trigger squeeze to land those precision long-range shots. Now, given the magnification and how they got the scale wrong, you could have probably pulled the trigger with his pinky and still landed that shot. But it's little details like this which kind of break the immersion for us in movies, and it's difficult for them to nail everything. Overall, I think they did a good job. Anyway, let's see how Chris deals with this threat. Right, Chris is ranging his target here 2,100 yards. That's 1,920 meters. It's incredibly far, okay? Now, he's shooting a rifle that's very capable of shooting that far. However, here's where the problem comes, and it's very important to distinguish this. Any rifle, no matter how accurate, shoots in a cone of fire. So let me explain this for you guys that don't know a lot about shooting. Now, here I have an example of a group that I shot at 100 meters. This group measures 11 millimeters. 3 shots through the same hole, basically. Now, to explain the cone of fire, at 200 meters, that group's going to double. At 300 meters, it's going to be 3 times the size. So at 300 meters, it's going to be 33 millimeters, okay? So 3 centimeters. Now, at 1900 meters, 1,920 meters, more specifically, that group's going to measure over 21 centimeters. So Chris lands a headshot on this guy. Now, to give you guys the scale, I've measured out and taped off what 21.3 centimeters looks like, okay? That is significantly larger than my head. So basically what this means is this shot is a 100% luck shot, okay? And Chris, I believe, even states this in his book. 100% luck shot. I actually don't know how he saw him. Maybe he saw some scope glint or something, because at 1,900 meters, no matter what optic you have, it's very difficult to see a human being, never mind someone that's tucked away. So this was super lucky, and obviously true story, it did happen, but yeah, amazing. So since this took place, there's actually been a confirmed sniper kill at 3.5 kilometers, which absolutely just blows my mind. And yeah, as a long range shooter, I know there's a crap load of luck involved in making a shot like that, but it is possible and it does happen. Right, so the next movie we get to is a movie called Shooter. It stars Mark Wahlberg, who's apparently super anti-gun but makes a living doing gun movies predominantly, which is ironic. Anyway, so the movie opens up, Sniper and his spotter are up on a little hillside providing overwatch. They see a target rolling in. The spotter gives him some wind calls and so on, but at no point in the first clip does he give our sniper an indicated lead on what he must lead the target with. So keep in mind, if I'm shooting at a long distance at a moving target, over and above the wind I have to hold off. So if this is my target and there's a little bit of wind, I'm not going to get into specifics, I have to aim slightly off the target. If there was no wind, I'd aim dead on the target. Now if there's wind and the target is moving, you'd have to add an additional hold. Now the spotter doesn't give him this, but yet Marky Mark lands a perfect headshot in the back of the guy's head and immediately racks another one into the driver, which sends the car off the road and crashes and looks super cool, but completely unrealistic. To hit 2 headshots in a row at 900 something yards on a moving target is nuts. It ain't happening. Now throughout Shooter, the one sort of underlying theme, as we had an American Sniper with the ridiculous recoil, is first of all, the rifles barely recoil in Shooter. Okay, and the other thing they did completely wrong is the scale of what things look like in the crosshairs with Mark Wahlberg's character is completely off. Everything looks super close. If you're shooting something at 900 yards, it's going to be pretty small in your reticle no matter what optic you have. So yeah, just little details like that sort of break the immersion. Obviously, for a viewer's pleasure, it's going to look super crap if the image is super far away, as it would be realistically with the crosshair on. You wouldn't really be able to see what's going on, so I get why they do that. But still, just bring the distances closer then and make the shots realistic, I guess. So after the good guys have made it clear, there's more enemy forces approaching. Now this time, which is quite funny, his spotter actually gives him a lead on this target. But if you look at the angles, that truck is driving straight towards him. So you wouldn't necessarily have to have any lead. You'd possibly just have to hold under a little bit because the guy's going to be driving into your bullet, so the range will actually be a little bit shorter than the last time he's given you a range estimation. But you wouldn't need to lead a target that's hitting right for you, would you? It makes no sense. So Bob Lee's shooting center mass, which is what you should do in a situation like this. Shoot the biggest target that you possibly can. Okay, he takes the guy off the back here, and then he appears to shoot the driver. But if you look closely, they made a big error here, and the window of the truck doesn't actually break, even though he shoots him through the front window. Also, this guy on the back of the truck, the technical with the machine gun on the back, which muzzle flash looks ridiculous, by the way. Who's he shooting at? He doesn't know there's a sniper over there. What's he doing? He's like shooting rounds of over into the air. That's a little bit strange. Another thing you'll notice here is Mr. Swagger's rifle is actually canted quite a bit, which basically means is if he's dialed in his elevation on his shot, he's actually dialing himself off the shot. If you're dialing for elevation, which is clearly what he's doing in this scene, your rifle needs to be not 100% zero, but as level as possible as it can be. Otherwise you will be missing your shots because you've actually dialed yourself off the side of the shot. And then you always gotta love the tire squeal on gravel roads. Seriously? Really? Okay, again, he gives him a lead call there for something that he doesn't need a lead call for. And now everyone's getting out and just blasting off into this mountain where they think the sniper and his spotter are. Right, so from this point in, Mr. Swagger just takes some headshot. Donnie's giving him some great calls, and he makes light work of these guys. One thing to note though is the flight time of bullets is also generally very wrong. At these kind of distances, modern calibers will take about a second to reach their target. Okay, so after you go click, it takes about a second to get there, and then the guys downrange will hear the sound of the actual gunshot a little bit later than that. But it's not an instant thing, like the bullet doesn't get there instantly. So you got to account for it, and that's why just now when we were speaking about lead, adding additional lead, because the bullet actually takes a while to travel down range. I mean, the sort of modern bullets we're shooting, they would be shooting something at about 2,900 feet per second. Okay, it's very fast, but it does take a while to cover that distance. Right, so a little bit later in the scene, Mark is now pinned down by a helicopter. It's doing its final sort of run on him to take them out, and he actually takes a shot at the top of the rotor. Now, I don't know if the helicopter's flying straight towards you, why you wouldn't shoot the pilot, because this section of the pilot's torso is pretty large, and you would definitely put the helicopter down, whereas if you shoot the rotor, you might get unlucky, not do enough damage to actually down the helicopter. In this case, obviously he does because it's a movie, but I would have definitely probably taken that shot at the pilot instead, because then you know the helicopter is going to go down. He can't do an emergency landing and repair and do further damage later. So put one in the pilot, send them to the ground, put that thing in a pile of smoke. That's what I would have done. But overall, a very makeable shot, I would say, in this scenario. He's prone, he's very steady, competent shooter, helicopters flying straight towards you. Yeah, you could make that shot. Right, so the famous assassination scene. They've got a rifle on which appears to be some sort of robotic system which can dial elevation apparently, even though you don't really see a mechanism how they're doing that. Whatever, it's a movie. But if you look at how the rifle sort of pans over, there's a lot of little reticle wobble, which there shouldn't be in a mechanical device, okay? Again, also we've spoken about how quickly the bullet gets downrange, and there's effectively no recoil. But this appears to be a .50 caliber rifle. No matter what device you have, especially if it can remotely operate like that, there's going to be quite a bit of recoil when you're shooting that rifle, even if you're detonating it remotely. I love how Mark knows he's loaded. He's accounted for barometric pressure. I mean, it's a little cringy. But it was accurate how he said the guy's using the sort of presidential flags as wind estimations. And that's very realistic. So this scene's pretty cool when you look at it at face value. But when you start dissecting it, it's a little bit cringy. Okay, so Mark's seeing if the shot is possible. At a mile, could somebody assassinate the President of the United States? Okay, spoiler alert, it's possible. However, so he's shooting some canned food in a mile. Now again, he's ranging it with his rangefinder, little dialogue with his dog, which I love. And but when we get on the scope footage of what he's actually seeing, it appears like he's shooting that can at maximum 200 meters, but probably closer if you look at what it looks like through his reticle. I do like how they show that he's got his little data book there with his dope data on previous engagement. He's dialing a little bit on his turrets. They actually show how his reticle comes down as he's dialing on his windage turret, which is hilarious because it's the other way around. Has a little chat with his dog, and we're going to engage this can of whatever it is. Single loads, despite that he's got a magazine fed, which is realistic. A lot of people would do that when training. Now if you look closely here, you'll notice this bullet vapor trail come in and hit this target. Now that's completely factually incorrect, physically incorrect. The vapor trail, which we will see in very far shots, depending on the conditions, will actually come from the top. Because the bullets, by the way, how cool does this look? The slow-mo they've done, everything, super cool. But then if we rewind this little section, you'll see that the bullet actually runs from the bottom of the screen into the can of whatever it is. But in real life, the bullet would actually arc this way and fall into the can. Makeable shot, again, like we said just now, even if you've got a rifle that can shoot tiny little groups, there's a whole lot of luck involved in making a shot like that, just because of the statistics at a mile. Again, a mile easier than 1.9 kilometers as in American Sniper, but again, a lot of luck involved in hitting this size target at a mile. Certainly can be done though. The final scene of Shooter. The bad guy's got a sawn-off shotgun taped to his hand. He's claiming that if Bob Lee shoots him in the face, that his spasm will shoot off the shotgun, killing his hostage, which is Bob Lee's little sweetheart. So what he does is, he shoots the guy in the hand. Why wouldn't you? Okay? Again, if we look at the sort of range when he gets up and from the shot of behind him, it does look like this shot is makeable to a competent shooter. Again, the magnification, what they're showing him seeing through the reticle when he's sort of aiming down the guy's arm, little bit closer, well, not a little bit closer, this scale's completely off. But again, as we said earlier, they want us, the viewer, that doesn't necessarily know a lot about shooting, hence they get away with all of this crap, to see what sort of Bob Lee is seeing without it being super far. But from everything I can see, it's a makeable shot. I would put that at about 400-500 meters. I could make that shot, and I know a lot of people that can make that shot. So super cool scene, and overall a fun movie. Guys, that's pretty much it for my breakdown of these two movies. I've got some other ones I'm going to get into, so I'm super excited to do those. Let me know if you like this video. If this is your first time on this channel, please do consider subscribing down below. Your support means a hell of a lot to us. Leave a thumbs up if you liked the video. If you didn't, leave a thumbs down. We make other videos to help you shoot better, which you can see over here. Also, make sure you are subscribed to the channel over here. And yeah, if you want to support the channel on Patreon, click down here. Thanks guys, I'll see you in the next one.